Anti-aircraft execution. On April 30th, 2015, North Korean Defense Minister Hyun Yong-chol was brought to the shooting range at Kangkon Military Academy in Pyongyang. He was approximately 66 years old and had served as Minister of People's Armed Forces since 2014. Just days earlier, Hyun had represented the regime on an official trip to Russia. He was one of the most powerful military figures in the country. At a military event presided over by Kim Jong-un, Hyun had been observed falling asleep. He had also shown repeated patterns of disloyalty, including failing to follow Kim's directives on multiple occasions. Kim Jong-un ordered his arrest in late April. No legal proceedings were held. Instead, a public execution was rapidly scheduled at the military academy's shooting range. Hundreds of military officials, party members, and forced onlookers were assembled to witness what came next. Hyun was executed by anti-aircraft gun firing squad. Anti-aircraft guns are designed to shred aircraft. Their use on a single human body at close range ensured complete obliteration. South Korea's National Intelligence Service confirmed the execution to lawmakers in a closed-door parliamentary committee session on May 13th. The NIS stated it had received information from a variety of channels and believed it to be credible. The United States State Department called the reports disturbing and described them as another extremely brutal act. By 2015, Kim Jong-un had ordered approximately 15 senior officials executed that year alone. Roughly 70 officials had been purged or executed since he took power in 2011. Uncle's betrayal. On December 8, 2013, Jang Song-taek sat among the assembled members of the Workers' Party Political Bureau in Pyongyang. Jang was 67 years old, married to Kim Jong-il's only sister, and widely regarded as the second most powerful man in North Korea. He had served the Kim dynasty for 4 decades, and was credited with helping the young Kim Jong-un consolidate power after his father's death in 2011. Without warning, armed guards seized Jang mid-session in front of the full assembly. He was publicly stripped of all positions. North Korean state media broadcast the arrest and called him despicable human scum, worse than a dog. Before Jang's own execution, his 2 closest aides, Ri Ryong-ha and Jang Soo-gil, were brought to Kangkon Military Academy. A large assembly of officials was forced to watch as both men were executed by anti-aircraft machine gun fire. Their remains were then destroyed with flamethrowers. Jang Song-taek reportedly fainted during the process. On December 12th, Jang was tried by a special secret military tribunal of the Ministry of State Security. He was found guilty of treason and immediately executed by firing squad. The official indictment accused him of forming a factional clique, womanizing, drug abuse, embezzling state funds, and plotting to overthrow the government. Analysts widely regarded the charges as fabricated justifications for removal. A widely circulated claim that Jang was fed to 120 starving dogs was later traced to a Chinese satirical website. It is a debunked fabrication. The execution cemented Kim Jong-un's absolute grip on power and triggered a sweeping purge of Jang's loyalists across the government and military. It established that no one, not even a blood relative, was immune. Famine scapegoat. In May of 1996, So Kwan-hui vanished from public life in North Korea. He was 71 years old, a career revolutionary who had served the Kim family since the founding of the state. As agriculture minister and secretary of the Central Committee, he had dedicated his entire life to the regime. By 1996, North Korea's famine, known as the Arduous March, was entering its 3rd year. Hundreds of thousands were dying. Kim Jong-il needed someone to blame. So Kwan-hui was held for nearly a year without announcement. He was interrogated by the Simwajo, the Deepening Group, a secret police organization Kim Jong-il had established specifically to run purges. After months of interrogation that defector testimonies consistently describe as involving torture, So signed confessions, stating he had been a CIA spy since the founding of the state, had sabotaged the agricultural system on American orders, had stolen fertilizer Kim Jong-il personally allocated, and had deliberately created the famine to weaken socialism. On September 9, 1997, North Korea's National Founding Day, chosen deliberately for maximum visibility, So Kwan-hui was publicly executed by firing squad on Unification Street in central Pyongyang. Thousands of officials, military figures, and citizens were forced to watch. Several other unnamed agriculture officials were shot alongside him. Kim Jong-il then ordered the body of So's predecessor, former agriculture minister Kim Man-kum, who had died naturally in 1984 and was buried in the Revolutionary Martyrs Cemetery, to be exhumed and his honors stripped. Even the dead were not safe. So's execution triggered a cascade of purges across the entire agriculture ministry. An estimated 10,000 officials were executed, and 15,000 sent to political prison camps during the broader deepening group purge. The famine continued regardless. Currency collapsed. On March 12, 2010, at 2 p.m., 76-year-old Pak Nam-gi was executed by firing squad at Sosang Stadium in Pyongyang. He had served as the party's top economics official for years, holding the position of director of the Planning and Finance Department of the Workers' Party. In November 2009, North Korea had carried out a surprise currency redenomination, replacing old one with new one at a 100-to-1 ratio. The reform wiped out the life savings of millions of ordinary citizens overnight. The result was catastrophic. Runaway inflation, worsened food shortages, and unprecedented public outrage followed. Some North Koreans were openly weeping in the streets. Markets collapsed. In late January 2010, at an open Workers' Party briefing attended by all high-ranking officials, Pak was publicly denounced as a traitor and arrested on the spot. He was charged with being a son of a bourgeois, conspiring to infiltrate the ranks of revolutionaries to destroy the national economy. The charge was almost certainly fabricated to redirect public anger away from Kim Jong-il, who had personally ordered the reform. At his execution, a second unnamed official was also killed. The presiding judge publicly called Pak a historical traitor who trapped the people in misery. Jang Song-tek's 2013 indictment later named Pak as a traitor for all ages, showing the regime resented him even after his death. No policy reversal was ever publicly announced. Citizens' savings were never acknowledged or compensated. Born in the camp. In approximately 1996, a 14-year-old boy named Shin Dong-hyuk was brought to a public execution site inside a North Korean political prison camp. Shin had been born inside the camp in 1982, the product of a reward marriage arranged by prison officials for two prisoners they deemed good workers. He had known nothing but the camp his entire life. Starvation rations, forced labor, beatings, and public executions were the only reality he had ever experienced. Weeks earlier, prison authorities had taken him to an underground detention facility and tortured him without explanation. Guards eventually revealed that his mother and brother had been overheard planning an escape. Under North Korea's doctrine of guilt by association, the entire family was subject to punishment for any member's transgression. Shin and his father were beaten and tortured as part of the investigation. Then Shin was brought before the assembled prisoner population. In front of him, his mother was hanged. His brother was shot by firing squad. Shin has stated that at the time, having been raised entirely within a system where informing on fellow prisoners was rewarded, and survival was relentlessly individual, he felt little grief. Only after his escape and exposure to the outside world did he understand the full horror of what he had witnessed. In 2005, Shin and a fellow prisoner attempted to crawl through an electrified fence. His companion hit the wire first. Shin survived by crawling over his companion's body. He eventually reached South Korea and became the world's most prominent North Korean defector. His account was detailed in the book Escape from Camp 14. The United Nations Commission of Inquiry cited his testimony as part of its 2014 finding of crimes against humanity in North Korea. By the way, if you find this informative, I cover stories like these regularly. Consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. Now back to the video. Mourning period drink. When Kim Jong-il died on December 17, 2011, his son Kim Jong-un declared a mandatory 100-day mourning period. All North Koreans, especially senior officials, were explicitly forbidden from singing, dancing, merrymaking, or recreation on pain of severe punishment. During the mourning period, Vice Minister of the Korean People's Army Kim Chol allegedly drank alcohol in the company of a female military colleague. The act was a direct violation of Kim Jong-un's decree. When the security apparatus discovered the infraction, Kim Jong-un reportedly ordered the execution with a specific instruction. There was to be no trace of him behind, down to his hair. The method was chosen deliberately to obliterate the body entirely. Kim Chol was brought to a location where a mortar round had been pre-targeted. He was forced to stand on the designated spot and killed by mortar bombardment. He was effectively vaporized by the blast. The female colleague present during the drinking was also reportedly executed, though her identity and specific method were not confirmed. The execution occurred in January 2012, but was only reported publicly in October of that year, when South Korea's Chosun Ilbo broke the story, citing intelligence sources. Kim Chol was one of at least 14 senior party, military, and government officials purged during Kim Jong-un's consolidation of power in the months following his father's death. Orchestra massacre. In March of 2015, 4 members of North Korea's prestigious Unhasu Orchestra were executed in Pyongyang. The Unhasu Orchestra was one of the regime's most celebrated state-sponsored ensembles, so prominent that Kim Jong-un's own wife, Ri Sol-ju, had been one of its members before her marriage. These were not dissidents or rebels. They were the cultural elite. The 4 victims included the orchestra's director general, a Russian-trained composer in his late 60s who had come from Japan's pro-North Korean community, a woman in her 40s, and 2 lower-level government officials in their 40s. They were accused of spying for South Korea. No specific evidence was disclosed to the witnesses. The 4 were arrested, stripped of their positions, and held while authorities prepared a public execution. Then, they were brought before an audience of approximately 400 to 500 members of the Pyongyang artistic community, all forced to attend. The victims were stripped naked and shot dead with machine guns. A Pyongyang resident who later spoke to Radio Free Asia during a visit to China said there had been no execution done in this cruel way, and that all people who saw the scene were shocked. South Korea's NIS confirmed to lawmakers that at least 15 executions had been ordered by Kim Jong-un as of April 2015. The families of the executed remained in Pyongyang under house arrest, awaiting follow-up measures such as transfer to a political prison camp or deportation. American student. In late December 2015, 21-year-old Otto Warmbier joined a small group tour to North Korea, organized by Young Pioneer Tours. Warmbier was a University of Virginia honor student from Wyoming, Ohio, described by friends as outgoing and full of enthusiasm for life. He planned to spend just 5 days sightseeing over the new year. On January 2, 2016, as his tour group prepared to leave Pyongyang International Airport, North Korean security officials pulled Warmbier from the departure line and detained him. He was accused of stealing a political propaganda poster from his hotel. 3 weeks later, North Korea broadcast footage of a weeping Warmbier delivering what his family later described as a coerced confession. On March 16th, he was tried in a staged proceeding lasting less than 1 hour, found guilty, and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. For the next 15 months, his family received no communication. No one on the outside knew what was happening to Otto inside North Korea. In early June 2017, United States officials were finally told Warmbier had been in a coma for over a year. On June 13th, he was medically evacuated to the United States. Doctors found he had suffered severe, irreversible brain damage. He was blind, deaf, unable to move, and unresponsive to verbal commands. Otto Warmbier died on June 19, 2017, at 2:20 p.m. at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. He was 22 years old. His family stated that the awful, torturous mistreatment their son received at the hands of the North Koreans ensured that no other outcome was possible. North Korea claimed Warmbier contracted botulism and fell into a coma after taking a sleeping pill. United States doctors contradicted that account. Dental records introduced as evidence in federal court showed new damage consistent with forcible trauma. In December 2018, a federal judge awarded the Warmbier family $501 million in damages against North Korea. The United States government subsequently banned American citizens from traveling to North Korea on tourist visas. Bad posture. On June 15, 2016, North Korean state media reported that Vice Premier for Education Kim Yong-jin attended an event celebrating the 50th anniversary of the North Korean Taekwondo Federation. He was 63 years old, a senior cabinet official who had spent his career inside the state apparatus. It was the last time he was mentioned by state media. At a session of the Supreme People's Assembly in late June, presided over by Kim Jong-un, Kim Yong-jin's sitting posture was observed from the rostrum. He was seen slouching. His body language was deemed insufficiently respectful to the supreme leader. Kim was arrested on the spot and handed to the North Korean intelligence agency. An intensive interrogation followed. The interrogation revealed additional crimes. He was officially charged with anti-party, anti-revolutionary agitator conduct, found guilty, and sentenced to death. In July 2016, Kim Yong-jin was executed by firing squad. South Korea's Unification Ministry spokesman Jung Joon-hee confirmed the execution at a regular public press briefing on August 31, 2016. The United States State Department stated the reports showed the extreme brutality of the North Korean regime. Kim Yong-jin was one of at least 2 senior officials executed in this period. By this point, South Korea's Yonhap news agency put the total number of officials executed under Kim Jong-un at over 100. A man who spent his entire life serving the regime was executed for how he sat in a chair. Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, subscribe so you don't miss our uploads. See you next time.